I'm Zach Trowbridge. I'm the Vice President of the Hagginwood Community Association. And we have on the line Kathy, our President, and Sean Loloee, who is a candidate for District 2 City Council Representative. So we're going to give Sean, we're going to kind of get straight to the meat of this, so that, because we have a lot of questions from residents. Thank you, residents, for providing those. And so we're going to kind of jump right in here as quick as we can. So Sean, I'll give you the 20-minute to just kind of, give us an overview of, introduction as to who you are and why you're running for city council, some of your platform, stuff like that. And then we can jump into the questions. So
sure. Well, thank you very much for making this available and possible to have this kind of conversation during this pandemic and bringing people together so we can engage in this conversation. My name is Sean Loloee. I am the owner of Viva Supermarkets on Norwood Avenue and Marysville Boulevard. I've been doing business in District 2 for approximately a little bit over 10 years. I've been a resident for about 5 years. I think it's one of the more wonderful districts that I've been involved with, and in the time that I've been doing my businesses. I'm originally from Los Angeles, moving to the Bay Area and then Sacramento. I think it's a wonderful community. However, I do believe that within the last 8 years, it's a community that's been kind of overlooked and been pushed on the back burner. And, initially I was hoping that I can connect with the current leaderships and see if collectively we can do things to better our district. But unfortunately, there was a hard time of getting our local leader on the phone or setting up a meeting so we can discuss our issues and our problems. So based on me continuously complaining and not seeing any results, I was approached by some of the members of the community and was asked if I would be interested to run. And after about 6 months of thinking about it and looking at all the positive and negative and the impact that it's going to have on the community and what the responsibilities need to be, and all obviously the impact it's going to have on myself, my family, and my current businesses, both in US and overseas, I thought that it's a calling, and I decided to run knowing that it does require 100% of my time, if not more, and dedication if we want immediate changes taking place in our district. And that's how I decided to run. And I told you I need a few minutes.
No, that's great. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it. So we'll just jump straight into the first question we have, which is, I know that this can be a touchy question for some people, and we don't expect you. If there's one thing I've learned from you so far, it's that you're not very partisan. But I'm just curious, like, kind of overall, what political party do you feel like most accurately reflects your beliefs and like your platform?
Definitely, I'm a registered Democrat who believes in certain social aspects of the Democratic Party. But I'm also, because of the world of business that I've experienced, and that's something I do on a regular basis, when it comes to fiscal, I'm also very fiscally responsible, and I believe in checks and balances when it comes to spending.
Okay, great. Thank you for the answer.
So, Democrat.
Democrat who believes in
fiscal responsibility.
Yeah, fiscal responsibility. All right, so next question. How will you ensure you are not distracted from District 2 needs by your personal company, Viva Grocers needs?
As I indicated in my opening statement, I believe that being a District 2 representative or council member, it's a full-time job. And based on that, in this last approximately a year, I've created systems, and I've brought up individuals within the company that now they're going to be stakeholders within the company. And also within our company, individuals have become promoted that would handle day-to-day operation as I would, allowing me to step aside from the business and concentrate on what I'm committing to do for our district once elected.
That's great. I really appreciate that, and I was very excited to hear that you were setting up a team to take over, some of the leadership responsibility at your chain, because I know that that's probably a really hard thing to do, right? Since that's kind of
Well,
your baby. So
it's necessary, because if you look at this job as a council member as a part-time job, then you get the issues that we're seeing in our district today. And I don't think that's fair to the residents of our district.
yeah, I agree. I think we need a full-time full-time representative of our community in that office. So I appreciate that. Great. Next question. Do you physically live in District 2? We've gotten this from a few people.
Yes, I do. I'm a resident of District 2. I've been for the last 5 years, and that's why I decided to run for this seat. Otherwise, number one, I wouldn't qualify. Number two, I want to support a district that I live in, not the one that I drive by.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your home address? Just kidding. Next question. You've said that our current Sacramento City Council lacks visionaries. What makes a good visionary, and what is your vision for District 2?
So, I think our current council team are merely kind of there, and they deal with situations as they come up, and there's a lot of conversation without any kind of response or any motivation to get it done. So there's a lot of talking and no action. And we've seen it in the last 8 years. There's been nothing but talks about our homeless situation, but yet nothing has been done. We've talked about social injustice for the last 8 years. Nothing has been done. We don't have a council body that has taken the time to see other works in other cities, other counties, other states, that we can come back and implement them in our district and actually improve them to be ahead of other cities that we have gone to. There have been field trips that the taxpayers have paid for the council members to go on, but when they come back, they don't have any ideas, or there's no vision of what we need to do. So in 2 to 3 years, we'll be ahead of this curve. So that's one of the things that has always been my concern about the local council. And in the last few meetings, we've seen it, that as a council member has a request, everybody kind of goes, well, if this council member wants it, it must be good for the community, so we're going to vote for it. And I just do not understand that if you're going to vote that's going to affect a district, you have to do some research to see if it makes sense or not. And it cannot be just okay, we just agree with this and it's going to be fine. And you're seeing it. There are certain areas within our city that are literally, they look the same today as they did 8 or 12 years ago.
Yeah, and kind of jumping off of that, things being the same 8 or 12 years ago, what do you see as your vision for District 2 in the next, if you receive the seat in the next 4 years where you would be finishing your first term?
Well, I think District 2 in the last 8 years has been put on the back burner, and what I see is a district that it's very diverse. It's a district that needs immediate attention, and the money that the city has from their general account and Measure U, we need to start spending some of that money in our district. So to start out with, we need to make sure our major streets are beautified, whether that's with landscaping, helping businesses to maybe paint the exterior of their building to make it more presentable. Our district, believe it or not, during summer times, our district is about 5 to 7 degrees warmer than downtown. And that's because the lack of trees and buildings that exist within our district. So all these need to be immediately looked at, and we have to make plans that we can implement them on a timely fashion. But we have to, as a council member, my job is to get the most amount of funding for our district and make sure that funding stays in our district and gets spent in our district to make our district better, not only certain special interest group and their personal lives better.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember you talking about the your idea for painting the fronts of buildings and creating funding to do that for empty spaces.
Absolutely. I mean, you go on Del Paso Boulevard right now, you have some local businesses that, restaurants that, you know, during this pandemic, they're definitely struggling. And I urge everybody to, you know, we got to help our family-owned businesses in our district. But the idea that they all have, you know, some of them just simply have banners as signage of their building, that needs to change. I mean, there's money there, but I just don't understand why that money hasn't been spent to improve these businesses for our community.
Speaking of local businesses, off the script question, what's your favorite D2 local restaurant?
Well, anybody that knows me, I'm a big supporter of Shift Coffee and their grilled cheese. So it's very addictive. But you know, when you go Southpaw, if you're a sushi fan, great sushi with really affordable pricing. Or you go to Colo's, which is Southern food. If you enjoy that, which I highly recommend everybody tries it, it's fantastic. Grocery outlet, believe it or not. I go there and I try to support that business. People say, well, that's your competition. No, that just brings more viability to our district. So just to name a few.
Nice. Lucky Express is one that I highly recommend up north here. That's right by your Marysville. I'm sure you've been there.
Right across the street.
Yeah, good spot. All right, next question. How will you be available? How will you be seen? How will the people who elect you be able to make their voices heard?
You know, I think this is a very important question. And it's been one of those questions that literally in the last 8 years, the residents of our district have had a hard time connecting with City Hall and sharing their views or getting even a feedback from City Hall. And that's simply because our current council member, it's very hard to get a hold of him. It's even harder to hear from him. So one of the things that I've committed to the district is that I will have monthly meetings with every association that's in our district and the president of that association, where we will meet once a month. And during this meeting, 3 topics from every association will be presented to me. And that would allow me 30 days to look into those topics and come back for the next meeting to make sure that I have answers for them. Some of the topics can be handled immediately. Some of them are going to need a little bit more time. And some of them are going to be very hard to achieve within the first 4 years. But at least I can convey that to the people so when they go back to their community, they'll have certain answers. On top of that, I want to make it my mission to have quarterly meetings with the entire D2, whether it's a technology like this that we can go online and just have a chat, or have multiple locations where I can meet the residents of D2 so we can have an open dialogue and open conversations about how we can better our district.
Got it. That's great. I think maybe add vice presidents of community associations to your list too.
Representative from associations, absolutely.
I want to come too, Sean. Come on.
Well, we're gonna need you because all this technology, you're on top of that list. Let's face it.
Happy to help. Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I love that you want to meet with associations because I like, people think there's a lot of accusations going around that associations are disorganized and that hurts D2, when in reality, associations are really well organized and there's a lot of teams on the ground that are doing a lot of work and we just need help being louder, right? And there's leadership associations in District 2. There's like really great communities of people who are like already doing the work. We just need the channel to amplify our voices. And so I love that you want to meet with everybody, all the leaders together and be available to residents.
And I think that would help the associations as well. I think once the residents see that as they're attending the association meetings, their voices are being heard and it's being conveyed to the council member, which indirectly means every association meeting, the council member is sitting in that meeting. So once the residents see that, I think their involvement with the association would increase as well. Since, if that happens, I think we hear more of the issues that we need to deal with. So as a team, we can mobilize and fix a lot of issues faster versus not hearing anything and thinking everything's perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Great answer. All right, moving on to the next one. What are your top 5 priorities for your first 100 days in office?
Sure. So one of my biggest reasons that I decided to run for this seat were the kids of District 2. And do we have enough activities for them versus other communities that we can make sure that they're going to succeed? So one of my top priorities to be involved with the kids and see what's missing in our community for them, and try to see what I have to do to make sure and implement that. In various meetings and during the primary, I was very big that our district needs a library that meets 2020 standards. It needs a learning center that meets 2020 standards. You can question that. The idea of having just a simple concrete box and call it a library, to me, that's not very appealing. So kids are definitely on top of my list. A cap on cannabis in our district, I think it's very well necessary and overdue. Excuse me 1 second. I'm on one of these timer lighting.
Motion detector.
So putting a cap on our cannabis activities in our district is another one. I've actually approached some of the cannabis dispensaries and I've shared this idea with them, and they're 100% supportive of that idea. Anytime you oversaturate a district with one type of business, it hurts the active businesses. Homeless, obviously, it's there. We need to have a fix for it immediately. District 2 is getting out of hand with homeless camps and the issues that's bringing to local businesses and local residents. And obviously, minimizing this gap between the police department and our community is a big issue as well. That gap needs to close down in order for our community to be a safer place and for our residents to be able to be comfortable living in our district.
Great. So I heard kids in the kids. I know from all of your debates that I attended have always been really high on your list, and the library obviously is something you brought up. When you say capping cannabis, are you referring more to dispensaries or growing operations in D2?
So here's the thing. Currently, we have 7 dispensaries in our district, and in the last 6 months, our current leadership was able to get 1 more license for Del Paso Boulevard. So our activity for the first 6 months of 2020 for District 2 was to add 1 more license to Del Paso Boulevard. we have almost 500,000 square feet of cannabis cultivation in our district, which is the highest versus any other district. My view is we have to support and let me be very clear. Cannabis is legal. So there's no questions or argument against that. I will support all the existing businesses, and I would look at them as your typical, as a coffee shop or a supermarket. They're a legal business and they've paid their fees. But we still don't know what the effects of cannabis is going to be for a community. So putting a cap on the whole thing and get a little bit more data, study these issues a little bit more before taking that cap and making it available, making more availability for licenses. We need that cap. And we need to have this communication with the cultivators and dispensaries on which direction we should head, that it's going to be great for their businesses and great for our community. You know, I am against seeing our 16-year-olds or 17-year-olds in a park, you know, utilizing weed where they need to be in a class. I have a problem with that. So until we can find how we can kind of create rules and policies to minimize that, I think just adding more dispensaries or cultivation to our district we're running. We should be crawling on this one first before we start running.
Yeah, got it. So it sounds like it's kind of cultivation and dispensaries that you feel strongly there should be a cap on.
Absolutely.
On I didn't know that we had, I knew our dispensary number, but I didn't know we had more cultivation than any other.
Yeah, and the sad part of it is a majority of these cultivators don't even live in District 2. Some of them don't even live in the city of Sacramento. And some of them are linked to massive illegal activities in city of Sacramento. And the FBI is actually reviewing some of the tactics because they feel like there was some major bribery going around where 2 people are linked to, I believe, 4 or 6 licenses.
Yeah, I've read that, and that there's belief that it could be related to politicians too. And we won't get into that because that's an active investigation. No one knows the real answers, but I agree there's concern there that needs to be, you know, researched more and dug into. So we're going to dig into some of the other priorities you brought up, but I'm going to jump on to the next one. Pandemic question. And I think this is a hard one. I don't think this is something that you will like have the ability. I'm trying to be really fair to you about what you can answer since you're not in office, you know, and what you know, will be able to answer. Someone submitted it. I want to ask for your thoughts. How will you guarantee residents receive sufficient income to remain in their homes, pay their bills, have enough food for their families, and have enough food for their families throughout the pandemic and until their individual households achieve stability? So again, really big question, but what are your thoughts?
So I do agree with you. That's a very big question. And some of it is obviously at federal level and some at state and some at city level. But this is what I can tell you, that within our city, there's some wonderful organizations. The River City Food Bank, which I just recently became a board member, and I was very grateful for their that organization picking me out of, I think they had 6 other individuals. So this is an organization that is very involved with having bags of grocery and food available to individuals regardless of their address and their income. They're all about, here's the food, just come and grab a bag and walk away. So that needs to be, we have to be more vocal about organizations such as this, that they're here, they're available, and make sure our D2 residents are taking advantage of that. There are also local nonprofits that are the right nonprofits. And let me break that down a little bit. D2 has quite a bit of nonprofits. However, I feel like some of the nonprofits are acting more as for-profits and how much they can add to their personal wealth. In the same token, I think there are some wonderful organizations that can help individuals, whether it's for job training, find a job, and help them with finding a shelter or a home to live in. So there's a lot of meat in that question, but also, we just had the CARE Act that was approved by the federal government. So City of Sacramento is getting $15 million. I'd like to know what percentage of that is going to come to our district, to see what's going to happen with that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a hard time whenever I'm watching those city council meetings and I see that, they're deciding CARES Act funding like the last time around, like $90 million. And the live stream, which according to them is the most watched channel of it, has like 20 people watching. I'm like, you guys, like this is happening right now. They're deciding where this funding goes. That's why I want to do more broadcasts like this and stuff because.
And the sad part of it is, if you're watching, it goes back to the vision of the council. When you watch the council and you see these kind of monies available, nobody has an idea. Nobody comes up and say, well, my district, we need this much for A, B, and C. Everybody's just having a chat. And then when we go offline, I guess they discuss it, they make their decision, and they move on. So lack of transparency is huge right now within our city hall.
Yeah, and I think with that transparency after funding is decided, like I'm not against the program by any means, but there was a program passed that was just someone's idea to provide free Wi-Fi around parks, right? Which is a cool idea, and that's great to give kids the ability to access the internet or other people who don't have that ability in their home. But it's like they just passed the funding really quickly, and now this program is happening. But it's like, who's doing this? Like, who signed the check? Who was the check written to? Like, I don't know. And I'm sure that information's out there. I just don't think that it reaches citizens easily enough that they can, be able to quickly get.
I have to agree with you. I think the information is out there. However, even trying to obtain that information from the city, it's a full day event.
Yeah.
If you're lucky.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Because the biggest issue that I've seen in this, especially the last 4 years, is like left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and nobody's questioning it, which is very hurtful. We got money that's coming to our district, but where's that money going to?
Yeah. And who's making sure it gets there and what's done with it after that? So.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Next question here. What specifically needs to take place? We're moving on from pandemic questions to homelessness. We're going to go through a few different topics here and try to keep everything together. What specifically needs to take place to address the vast and varying needs of homelessness and mental health within this community? That's obviously another really big question. That's I'm sure I know you have ideas around, but just acknowledging that that's a big question to ask. And then also, what actions will you take for this to occur? We'll typo there, but what are your direct plans?
This is, again, going back to the lack of vision of our current administration. Our homelessness situation is divided into 3 aspects. We have individuals that need immediate medical attention. We have individuals that need immediate rehab attention. And then we have the percentage that they need economic assistance to get back on their feet. A perfect example, I think, was how we were able to get the ARCO or sleep train arena for the pandemic, where state stepped in and they created all these beds at $500,000 a month rent, yet the state wanted to run it. And I think that for the first 3 months, they either had only 1 patient or altogether 6 patients. So completely a failed event. I think if the city ran that, it would have been a little bit more successful. But we need to think outside the box. And I think with some of the current facilities that we have, we can definitely put a dent into this homeless situation that we're faced with within the city of Sacramento.
That's great. So do you have any, just like anything more, a little more specific about what you think are like some quick wins to at least help with the, like, I'm not asking you to solve homelessness on Zoom for us, but any like, things that you've come up with or ideas or plans or thoughts you want to explore?
So I'm going to answer your question. It might it might be an answer for question number 2 and number 3. So if you would allow me, can I just give you my overall view, and then if there's more questions, then we can definitely answer. I think the immediate thing we have to do is create a partnership between us and some of the local hospitals, and that needs to be done immediately. So the individuals that need medical attention, mental illness is a big issue. And unless we take these individuals and give them the right medication, we're not going to fix this problem. We have to create a partnership with our local rehab centers to take individuals that are drug addicts and kind of take them off the street and put them in those rehabs for them to get better. As far as individuals that are faced with economic hardship, there are, you pick City of Modesto right now. They went and picked up a motel, 186 rooms. They are renovating it, making it into small suites with small kitchen and what have you. And they're bringing some of their homeless into those facilities. Where they're safer and they can be maintained and looked after. So those are some of the immediate fixes. I drive around our city, our county lines, and you see all these apartments that have big signs that say vacant. So when we have these facilities and we can approach and create some kind of a mutual understanding or a business deal with them, those are fast fixes. We don't need to rebuild the wheel. It's there. Other cities have done it. So you just have to kind of look at that model, view it as its pros and cons, try to minimize its cons, and then roll it out, which goes back to our city council and lack of vision and not being visionary to take decisions and make policies that can speed this up. Our homeless situation every year has gone worse. And there's no light at the end of the tunnel. But it has to be a county, state, and federal issue. It cannot become a D2 issue. Our current leadership wants to build 700 houses in D2 for the homeless population. I'm 100% against that, simply because we have to fix the issues within D2 first and make sure that the residents of D2 are getting all the resources before we can add more of policing and responsibility for D2 residents.
Great. I think that's a great answer. And I apologize. I know I have like 3 questions here that are all asking the same thing. So I see what you're saying there. Kathy and I are having issues with muting. So I think, Kathy, I know you wanted to jump in if you have something on that.
I did. I know the county, I believe, did something similar to what you were just talking about. Modesto did with hotels. And so I think the county put 5 hotels into use for homelessness and COVID response. One of those is in Woodlake, the one that's next to the Cal Expo and Costco. So what are your thoughts on the success rates of those experiments right now?
So the number one issue that I had with that was the lack of communication between county, city, and the residents.
Yeah.
Because our council member had no idea that that has taken place. So there's a problem there, that we're not talking, or the county is talking, but we're not listening. But at the end of the day, this is something that I think needs to be transparent and find out, if this is going to work or not. There are multiple facilities within the county lines itself that we could have utilized. But the idea of doing something like this where the city doesn't have any information on, and then the residents don't even know anything about it, was very alarming for me. I think that the idea is great. We can take certain individuals off the street, but again, how is the selection? How are these individuals being selected to move into this facility? So I went to the facility. I talked to the manager of the facility. I said, how do you get individuals coming here? And I was told that either the police department drops them off from the street, or from the hospital, the police department drops them off in this facility. Again, I found that a little bit uncomfortable, because being in an environment, I like to know what the facility is being used for. So, and is it being taken care of the right way? So I asked her, I said, have you had any issues? And she said, well, if we have issues with anyone that's staying here, we call the police and they remove them immediately. Okay, that's great, but where are they being removed to? Yeah. So there are all these, questions that I have, and unfortunately, because I'm sitting here and not in City Hall, certain individuals feel like they don't really need to answer me at this point. Mm-hmm. But I'm very excited that once elected, they will have to answer me, which we're going to be very, go public with their answers to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. The next question was, what are the 3 most important steps to take now to address our unhoused population? I feel like you kind of answered that already. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I think, again, with going to the homeless, we have to have this partnership between the hospitals and rehabs and the city and the county. If we do not have that, the housing is not an issue. The housing is just complaining and whining that this is what the problem exists. There is plenty of housing. There are plenty of apartments within the county's jurisdiction that are almost empty. They need a facelift. It can be purchased by from the owners and turned into a facility that would take care of the homeless population.
All right.
I gotta move again. There we go.
All right. So a good transition there is our next topic is affordable housing questions. We're about 12 out of 20 questions down for anybody who's tuned into Facebook. Feel free to add your question, any questions there that you want addressed at the end of this. However much time Sean has, we'll make sure and try to hit as many as we can. They can be follow-ups or something different than what we're talking about, but we're going to keep going through the ones that residents submitted for now. Affordable housing. So what is your plan for making sure that low to mid-income renters are not being pushed out by gentrification and raising rents? What happens to a community when the people who created it and live there no longer can? I think this is another really big question, right? But want to kind of get your thoughts on it and any actions you might be interested in taking to address it.
So right now today, the state of California has set aside funding for affordable housing that has never been available in the history of this state. So we have to take advantage of that and not only build affordable single-family housing, but build affordable, more denser constructions, such as apartments or townhouses. But rather than creating a 300-unit apartment complex as affordable housing, affordable rent, I think we should make about 30 to 35% of that available and the rest market rate. So both group of people can coexist and help one another out to move forward. But we have to take advantage of the funding that the state has set aside for us and make sure that we're utilizing that to be to invest in D2. And I think we've completely missed on that, which goes back again to lack of leadership and being transparent with how the funding is being used.
Great, I appreciate that answer. Any comment on the gentrification piece? What happens to a community when people who created it and live there no longer can?
And I think that that's something that, again, once in that seat, it also hits the issue of rent control. And it's something that I would insist that it needs to get on a ballot for people to make that decision. My personal view is that any kind of structure that was built before 2010 should exercise some kind of a rent control to make it fair for individuals, because those properties were purchased at a much lower amount compared to today's real estate market. But again, this is something that once into that seat, by doing more research and reaching out to the experts, we can probably get a lot more information that can be implemented a lot faster. And that's one of the things that I pride myself on. I'm not an expert on I consider myself as a very good student. Even as running my company, I always love to hear from my top management's ideas that we can implement. And regarding these issues, I think we have to approach some of the professionals and look at some data and see what works and what doesn't work, and start implementing those ideas to make sure that individuals that have been in our district for a certain amount of time, they're protected, and individuals that are moving into our community from the Bay Area, they're going into that market rate to make D2 a better place for them and their family and the existing residents of our district.
Okay, great, thank you. You kind of answered the next question there about your position on rent control initiative. You said you want it on the ballot and you think it should apply to things built prior to 2010, correct?
Mm-hmm. So it needs to be a ballot, and I think people need to be fully informed about the pros and the cons on rent control, and then we'll make a decision as a city.
Yeah. Great. Moving into some kind of economics of District 2 questions. As part of your campaign, you have highlighted your role in opening several retail and grocery stores in economically disadvantaged communities. Aside from economics, how have these retail and grocery stores positively contributed to District 2? How do these entrepreneurial successes qualify you to represent District 2 residents as part of Sacramento's City Council?
So myself, I had a vision when I came to District 2, and to open a supermarket, which is a very, very complicated thing to do. It's one of the hardest businesses to start, to run, and make sure it's successful. We tried, and when we tried to do that on a Marysville Boulevard, we were actually met with multiple challenges and issues from our current leadership's office, that these barriers were purposely put in front of us to make sure we don't open that store. So I would use my experience and my years of doing business in D2 to invite other businesses to come to our district, especially family-owned businesses. Whether we have to pass and understand that in order to have small businesses to come up to our district, we have to create an incentive. Whether that incentive is to waive off their hard costs at the planning department, or what have you, That's how we have to encourage them. And using models like myself and other successful retailers in District 2 to say, yes, not statistically, the numbers don't look that appealing, but from experience, it's been great and been very successful. District 2 also holds the largest manufacturing zoning in city of Sacramento. So we have to be able to attract manufacturer companies to come to our district. How do we do that? We have to make sure that we create, our education, our schools have to be improving, because what do they look for when they want to relocate a whole company? How are the schools? How's the crime rate? How is their recreation activities? And how is affordability? So if we have these kind of covered, I think going and soliciting businesses out there, it would be much easier. And taking an extra step to make sure that even our local residents that have ideas to open businesses, to make it possible for them, whether it's on small loans from the city, short-term basis, whether it's going to some local banks and asking for assistance to make these things happen. There's definitely possibilities, but it only takes the right person in that seat to make these possibilities become realities.
Great. I appreciate the answer about the more commercial industrial areas. It's not something that like we have a lot. Well, I guess we do, but it's not like the forefront of our minds usually as residents of like how we can attract big businesses to move their entire, presence to this area. So that's a great point. That's interesting. Pivoting a little bit to, what most people are thinking about, which is like Marysville Boulevard storefronts and Del Paso Boulevard storefronts and, all these vacant buildings and properties we have. How will you advocate for more businesses in development, like your grocery stores, for instance, to come to the district? And what types of businesses do you think we need? Who will you be trying to get to come to our area? More.
Well, we did some of the basic stuff, right? I mean, I would love to have a gym in our district where we can actually go and work out it versus going outside of our district for that possibility. So that's something that I like to attract. I would love to bring more coffee shops on Marysville Boulevard or even Norwood to make them available for our residents. More retail, whether it's boutiques with clothing. I mean, as all of us know, the idea of malls and bigger is better. That's not what's happening right now. Malls are Nordstrom just moved out of Arden Mall, and we're seeing that. Macy's is literally hanging on the last thread before they're out. So by creating this boutiques and what have you in our district, we make it available. We allow our residents to support these businesses within our district, which will attract more businesses to come in as far as retail goes. But the manufacturing is something that I think not too many people think about. And that can create a lot of revenue and a lot of jobs for D2. Sinton just went into District 1, and they're a manufacturing company. How do we miss on that opportunity? Well, I'll tell you how we missed it. We have a council member that works full-time for her district versus the idea that D2 requires a part-time council member.
I appreciate the answers there. So I'm going to jump on to the next question. We're getting up to the time we originally said, which was an hour. If you're able to go, are you able to go over a little bit to get through these, or do you have a hard stop?
No, I'm all yours.
Cool.
after all, I'm running for this seat to be available as much as I can.
Beautiful answer, as if that was scripted. No, that was great. Awesome. So in your campaign statement, you wrote that you will push for progressive policies. We're moving on to kind of general policy questions now. What does progressive mean to you in terms of District 2? And what is a specific example of a progressive policy you would push for that would directly benefit District 2 residents?
So obviously transparency is a big thing, right? To be as transparent as possible. We have to be more involved with our kids and education, the education system that we have. We're in 2020, and we got to make sure our community is set for that, whether it's our internet, the internet that we're using and its accessibility throughout our district is going to be huge. Also, public safety is a big thing that we have to look at. And looking at policies that we can definitely utilize, measure you to the benefit of our district, to bring some money and make sure it's spent in our community. So education, public safety, and policies to make sure that District 2 gets its share of funding are probably some of the things that I would like to get implemented ASAP.
Okay. What is your position and view regarding the strong mayor proposal?
So obviously, I'm not in that position to be able to vote one way or another. But I mean, come November, I am. But I think, you know, Sacramento is a city that is on verge of growth. And the idea that every little thing has to come in front of a council to decide on, and if the council is not fully engaged and want to see changes, these things would just drag on. I am for a strong mayor initiative. However, I think it has to have its checks and balances looked at very closely, because whether we have a current mayor that's all into making our city to become #1, we don't know who the next mayor is, and are they going to try to take advantage of this? So there has to be certain policies that the city council has at its own liberty, that they can put a stop on some of the decisions that the mayor is willing to make and some of the money that the mayor is willing to spend. So again, I was not there when they set up these policies for the strong mayor proposal. I've read it. I think it's it's a lot better than the previous strong mayor initiative with our previous mayor, Kevin Johnson. But I still think it needs some fine tuning. And we're at the position where the strong mayor is something that can be useful to better our city.
As it stands now, as the policy is written today, you know, not accounting for any changes that may have happened in the last few days, but just kind of what the general understanding of it is right now, do you plan on voting for it or against it in November?
Well, the only thing that kind of bothered me, that they tied up this $40 million annual expenditure into needy communities, where the mayor has that kind of a capability. #1, I don't think we should set an amount, just because we still don't know what's going to come or what's going to happen with this pandemic that we're going through. But beside that, from what I've heard and what I've read, it's my understanding that the council actually has a 2/3 vote if they're opposing an initiative by the mayor. So there is a checks and balance that's being implemented on it. So from now to November, there's still a lot of studying and understanding that I need to intake, that would definitely reflect my voting on this particular topic.
Cool.
But from the outside, from what I've read and understood, I don't see a problem with it, but there's still some more digging I got to do to really look into the detail and go back years and see, you know, how would have a strong mayor resulted in today if we had it, let's say, 4 years ago.
Gotcha. An interesting perspective. I think the thing that concerns me the most, I see benefits to strong mayor and I see drawbacks, but the thing that concerns me the most is the rollout that is proposed right now and waiting multiple years for an additional council seat to be able to get that 9th person. Because, you know, as we've seen, getting 2/3 of 8 is pretty difficult. Getting 2/3 of 9 is significantly less difficult, right? So while I see some benefits to it, I'm concerned about how it's being proposed to. You know,
Sure, I'm with you on that, but also, again, the landscape of city council is going to change come November, with the hope that we have 3 new people, including myself, that's going to occupy those seats. And I've had the pleasure of meeting Katie, and I'm very excited to be working with her because she's a visionary. She has ideas and she wants to implement them. So I think, you know, when you have 3 new individuals on the council that are very passionate about the seat, that is not simply for their own personal resume, but they want to make changes that benefit their communities, some of those concerns can be addressed very nicely.
Great. Next question on general policy. What can City Council do to better represent the voices of the diverse communities throughout Sacramento?
Obviously being transparent. Transparent, minimize the corruption, and making yourself available to hear the communities of what their concerns are, right? I'll give you a perfect example. Robla community, a wonderful community. They were very, very aggressively against a new cultivation warehouse going into their community. They expressed it, they talked about it, it went in front of council 5 times, it was removed from the agenda 5 times, and then during COVID pandemic, it passed, right? Having a cannabis dispensary on Del Paso Boulevard, the community was against it. It got voted on during COVID-19 and it passed. We have to listen to our constituents who voted for us for that seat. And we have to follow what they deem the best for the community. It cannot be, I know the best, so I'm going to decide for everybody in this community.
Yeah, I think that distinction between continuously listening, not you know, having your seat that you won based on your ideals, so you know what the best way to continue to be an audience for your constituents is super important and a good distinction.
And you know, I think having not only council hearings on a specific date and time, but also have planning hearings on a time that everybody can attend or listen to. To have a planning meeting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you know, what's the point? I mean, you got people that are working. They can't take off from work to come and talk about their views about a particular, you know, cause. Same thing with the council meetings. I think the fact that they're set for Tuesday is great, but how about moving them around a little bit so other people can actually drive and be in those meetings and have a voice? I'm hoping with the technology today that once things go back to normal, that we still have this opportunity to attend these meetings via technology. But I think the planning department needs to have a set date and in an evening so residents can attend those meetings. Our city council has to do the same thing to make sure it's readily available for the residents. We cannot have city council meetings at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Thank you for that. When we've tried to rally around certain items that are going to be on the council and tried to get residents involved and willing to go and speak up, when you have the obstacles of getting there and parking and the high cost of parking, and then you have the scheduling, which, as you've said, is often in the afternoon when people are working, or you have to get there early enough to be able to get them into the doors when people are still working or have barely gotten off. Sometimes we've been there until 11 o'clock at night. There aren't a lot of people that can really commit that kind of time to an issue, more than very occasionally. It's really a hindrance towards getting involved, and it's really a turnoff for getting involved in city matters.
And I think certain topics that are very sensitive to the community, whether it's a district or the city, those need to be the first items on the agenda. Right? Versus the very last item on the agenda, which goes back to your comment right now that, some people just don't have the time to stay in that meeting till 11 o'clock at night. And then all of a sudden it's 10:30, it's the very next item on the agenda, and then all of a sudden it's called off.
Yep.
Which, if anybody knows about what was going on within the Robla district and one of the facilities, that happened multiple times.
Yeah.
Which was very frustrating.
And then you're supposed to try to find transportation and parking and childcare again.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's tough.
Next question is moving into policing. As inequities in policing practices and training continue to be exposed, how will you bridge the gap of mistrust that currently exists within our local community and our local officers? What training, funding, policies do you think would support making this happen?
Sure. So again, I'm not in that seat yet, but my vision is we definitely need a police reform. And when you talk to the officers, they're in full agreement. We have to close this gap between police department and the communities. And the only way we can do that is by getting the community leaders and the police department on regular meetings where the community can address their issues with the police department, and the police department can address their issues with the community, to have this open conversation and trying to see how we can chip away from this and bring that trust that the community has or had in the police department back, and bringing that all in from the police department to protect the community back in as well. I think the right training is required for our police officers. I think in this day and age, our police officers are under tremendous amount of stress with what's going on, and that needs to be addressed to make sure that they can seek the help they need, to make sure that it's not used against them, but making it a mandatory for the police officers to seek, you can be physically fit, but are you mentally fit? That's a big thing. And by just communicating and bringing these to the community and the police together, and allowing the two talk and find out what the community needs to do to get closer to the police department and vice versa. That's what I would do from day one. And that's going within our district. I would like to know who the police officers are and actually set up that meeting where the officers and community leaders actually meet and understand what it takes to police these areas better and more effectively. without over-policing. No one wants their community to be over-policed.
Yeah, absolutely. Good, great answer. Next question is about code enforcement. I think this is kind of a tough question for you too, because you know, you're not in the seat yet, right? But very frequent issue that we hear about from our residents, especially in this area: illegal dumping, street sweeping, street and sidewalk maintenance, all things that don't seem to be taken care of here. How will you use your position to be a champion for these issues?
Sure. So the one thing is, obviously, my first thing would be reaching out to the residents and say, I need your help. So as residents, we have to also police our street to make sure, you know, if there's any illegal dumping or what have you, it gets addressed right away. At the same time, I will definitely like to sit down with our code enforcement supervisors and make it very clear to them that there's certain ordinance within our city, that a certain way a house needs to be kept, maintained. There's so many rusted cars that you can have in your driveway. And our code enforcers need to be out on the street writing letters as whether it's the first time that they've seen it, and putting that resident on notice or the homeowner on notice. And if they don't see any solution, to create a fine, that if you're not maintaining your facility, then this is what's going to happen. And with that hope, as we clean up, that becomes the norm. So people will feel guilty if they want to dump their trash on the middle of Grand Avenue. Once they see Grand Avenue as a pristine street, well lighted, great landscaping, that would make them feel guilty to do that. And then also making it very clear that every resident is policing their street. So if somebody's doing something wrong, we can't just tell them dial 311, knowing that it's very hard to get an immediate response. So we just have to have that better connection between the code enforcement and my office to make sure that it's happening on a daily basis, not once a week.
Great. Thank you. I know that's a challenging issue because it's a constant battle, right? But I agree with you that we all need to take responsibility in our streets.
But also it's a chain reaction, right? Right now we have a major issue with our homelessness population. Yeah. So guess what? Some of that illegal dumping or some of that trash that gets left behind is coming from that category, you know. And trust me, in our business, our parking lot, it's on a daily basis that we come and we find refrigerators, couches, all this stuff, just nicely, you know, dumped in our parking lot the night before.
I know that some years ago, the code enforcement worked more as a preventative. That code enforcement, the city went through and saw things that needed to be taken care of. And when the economy tanked and our budget shrunk, you know, we got rid of a lot of code, and we were told that the residents had to pick up the job of reporting. And as the departments got more creative with how they would address that, if I understand correctly, right now the process is that residents report an issue and code will send out a letter based on that. And then if it's not resolved, then I would have to report that again, and then a code officer would go out and see that. And that structure and system really is not serving our neighborhood very well, because there are a lot of people that don't want to get involved, that don't have the time to go around and report everything that's going on in their neighborhood on a daily or weekly basis. So I think there's some structural issues that need to change too.
And I agree with you on that. And that's something that I think once elected, I would like to sit down with that department and find out what the issues are and how can we fast track a complaint so it doesn't take 4 weeks before we have a code enforcer visiting a site.
Mm-hmm. We've also asked for a couple of hot spots to be considered as a regular garbage pickup.
Which is a challenging one to sell, but.
Yeah.
So our last question here, just a reminder for anyone watching on Facebook Live, I see we have a bunch of people watching, but if you have a question, please just submit it in the comments there and I will bring it up. The last question we have prepared is kind of in summary of bringing this all together, what do you think makes you the best candidate for the seat of District 2 City Council member?
Well, I decided to run for this seat simply because of the passion I love that I have for district. It wasn't for self-gain. I didn't decide to run for this seat for monetary reasons or a title. Knock on wood, I don't need neither one, or neither I live for that kind of showing off. I'm very committed to the district and I want to see changes. And I will deliver on the promises that I make. I'm not a politician, I'm a businessman, and I'm very dedicated and committed to anything that I decide to take on. That's why deciding to become a councilman, but not yet. November 3rd will dictate that. But deciding to run in this race, it took me 6 months to make that decision because I had to make sure that I'm 100% in, and I'm 100% in it for the community. I have zero to gain. My fulfillment would be what's in it for the community. As community gains, that's when I gain. And I think that's the biggest difference that you will see of what's going on in the last 8 years versus when I become the council member. I am running to make things better, and I'm not running to make friends with special groups that comes down to you scratch my back and I scratch yours while the entire district falls behind. I'm very passionate. I've made a commitment, and I will definitely deliver on my promise.
Thank you for that, Sean. Thank you so much for taking the time to go through all these questions.
My pleasure.
To go through the questions with us today. Yeah, it was amazing getting to talk to you and hear your perspective on a lot of these things. I don't have any other submitted questions. So Kathy, do you have anything you wanted to say?
Just looking back through my notes real quick. You mentioned that we had more cultivation than any other district, and I was curious about that. That was when I was on the forced mute, sorry, or I would have brought it up right then. I know that District, I think it's 6, had a lot that were in the works when the ordinances were being proposed. So how are we in comparison to that?
The information that I have, we have more square footage for cultivation than that district.
Okay. And is that a lot of that focused up in Robla? Or is it spread throughout?
I think Robla was an area with a lot of warehouse facilities that became, this hot zone for this cultivation. But there are other warehouses throughout our district that are running as cultivating.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we know. We know that. Okay. But you don't know what the comparison is with D6?
I know we have more than they do. I just don't know the exact difference between what they have.
We would love to get that resource from you after this. If you have a resource about that, that would be amazing. I know it's hard to remember all of that an hour and a half.
Oh yeah.
On a Monday.
Down.
I was just curious if you knew if it was close or if we were a long ways ahead of that.
I'll find out for you.
And then the other question that I had was, when you talked about homelessness, I know you mentioned that we really need to be working on collaborations with the hospitals and with the rehab, and then also the economic pieces of why people are homeless. Currently, with the COVID, the pandemic restrictions in place right now, which I think they look like they're going to be in place for quite some time. No one can be moved. And so we would like to see creative solutions looking at porta potties, hand washing stations, and garbage collection. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that for the massive amounts of homeless camping that we have going on in our district.
Right.
You know, we need to make the best of it and make it sanitary.
Right. So we need to have an immediate solution to minimize some of these existing problems that we're facing, right? So even in COVID-19, we see that the homeless population, they're walking around, they're touching, they're grabbing, they're using same needles, you know. So there's a concern on what is the coronavirus, how active has it been amongst this group of people. We don't have the data for that, which is kind of concerning.
Sure.
Because they are very mobile and they come through shopping centers and leave shopping centers. So going back to your suggestions, I do agree with you that right now, because the hospitals do not want to make any moves, or because of the COVID-19, we have to come up with some immediate fixes or band-aids that will be too costly to the city, but will be a fix to some of the problems that we're seeing. So whether it's the porta potty, hand washing facilities, and having big trash can dumpsters that they can utilize, and asking the city to pick up the trash on daily basis, not even weekly basis, just to make sure that we have a certain amount of confinement, especially during COVID-19.
Right.
The fact that we haven't done any of those goes back to my first conversation going, we lack initiative, we lack vision right now. And that's very concerning because we don't know when this COVID-19 is going to go away.
No.
So
we really can't just sit on hold.
We can't say, well, it's COVID, let's just stop. And then when it goes away, we come back to it. As elected officials, it's our responsibility to make decisions immediately to help our community.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
That's a beautiful answer to that. Well, again, thank you so much for your time today, Sean. It means a lot. As soon as we finish here, I'll try to get this recording over to you to review, and we'll, be able to share it with everyone. So
sure. And I know you had a final question on your number of questions, which, by the way, they were phenomenal questions. Even the last one, I thought it was great. It's amazing how they want, the question is, well, who's his wife? Well,
it felt a little intrusive to ask that question. I'm like, we're interviewing Sean, we're not interviewing his wife.
I've been, my wife is my backbone, and I would have never dared to run for this without her approval. She's a dentist. We have 2 beautiful children. She will not be politically involved. However, as a dentist, one of the things that I want to do, and I've asked her and a group of other dentists, is once a month or maybe twice a month to have pretty much a free dental care for our district, where the patients merely would pay for the material or any lab work, and not actually the going rate, to help some of the low-income residents with any dental issues that they might have. So far, I have gotten that commitment from her once I get elected. But that's the only involvement she will have.
Wonderful.
I think your immediate response of you wouldn't dare run.
Oh, definitely. Oh, no. I know
partnership is important.
I know my spot in the household. I know where I stand, and I have much more executive power in my office versus the House. So.
Oh, that's terrific. I love it. I hope that she gets to watch this and enjoys that. All right. Well, we can go ahead and wrap this up, I guess. Thanks again, Sean. Really appreciate your time. And we look forward to connecting with you again soon, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Again, I appreciate both of your time. Thank you so much. This is what I'm hoping that we'll have in our community: engagement from the residents, coming in, asking the tough questions, wanting the answers, finding out how they can help to reach the final point faster.
Right.
And this is where it starts. You know, it might start with 2 or 3 people. Hopefully that gets added to 30, 40, 50, 100, 1,000 people that want to be, you know, hands-on. So I appreciate both of your time. I truly appreciate you setting up this event. Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll see a good result come November 3rd. And what I tell people, if you're happy with how everything has been in the last 8 years, you shouldn't vote for me. I'm not the right candidate. I want change, and I want a change immediately from what we had to go through in the past 8 years. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, John.
You guys have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye.